Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into Five Nights Tower Defense. Honestly, one of the most addictive tower defense games we've played in a while. If you're a fan of the FNAF series and love strategy games, you're in for a real treat. This game brings together all of your favorite and, let's be real, terrifying animatronics and puts them into a battle for survival. But here's the catch. You've got to pick the right ones if you want to crush those leaderboards. Not all animatronics are created equal, and that's where we come in. In today's video, we're breaking down the definitive Five Nights TED tier list, so you know which animatronics will give you the best bang for your Faz coins. We'll go through the heavy hitters, the sneaky strategists, and even those you might want to avoid. Whether you're just starting out or looking to optimize your dream team, stick around because we're about to make your tower defense game stronger than ever. Let's jump right in. I'm quickly moving on to the video, and I'm ranking units in Five Nights Tower Defense. Before we start, if you enjoy these types of tier list videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Enjoy watching. First, let's talk about the best units for early game.
A very small portion of the audience is subscribed to the channel. Please don't forget to subscribe if you like these types of videos. Thanks.
The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Toy Bonnie, Summer Toy Bonnie, Toy Freddy, and Foxy. Alright, let's talk about some of the worst early game units in Five Nights Tower Defense. Now, don't get me wrong, some of these characters are absolute legends in other games, but here, well, not so much. First up, we've got Toy Bonnie. Poor Toy Bonnie, there's just no saving this guy. His stats are terrible across the board. Whether it's his damage, range, or just overall usefulness, he's more of a cute decoration on the battlefield than an actual threat. Honestly, you're better off investing your resources elsewhere. Then there's Summer Toy Bonnie. Yeah, she can slow enemies, which sounds useful, right? But nope, don't be fooled. She's just not worth it. You're better off sticking with a regular starter unit, and don't even get me started on Toy Freddy. This dude has such a low range and only dishes out 20 DPS by default. It's like he's trying to take down enemies with a pillow. Finally, we've got Foxy, the speedster we all love, until he decides to go melee in a tower defense game. Melee in a TD? Yeah, hard pass. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Baker Toy Chica, Party Chica, Withered Chica, Sniper Cupcake, and Chica. So let's talk about some of the C tier early game units in Five Nights Tower Defense. I mean, we all know starting out can be a bit rough, and if you've got no choice but to use these units, well, you make do with what you've got. First up, Baker Toy Chica. She's an explosion unit, and yeah, she's not awful. You'll get by with her for a while. The explosions help early on, especially when the enemies are clustered, but don't get too attached, okay? She's fine for a beginner, but you'll want to replace her as soon as you unlock something better. Then we've got Party Chica, who's basically here because of one thing: splash damage. That's her one party trick, but outside of that, her stats are, let's just say she's not winning any awards. You'll be carrying her more than she's carrying you. If you need something that hits more than one target at a time, she'll do in a pinch, but trust me, you'll want to move on ASAP. It's like, why have splash damage if everything else about her is trash, right? Now, Sniper Cupcake is an interesting one. The range on this guy? Insanely high. Like, you can hit things from practically across the map. Sounds cool, right? Except for one teeny tiny issue, the DPS is super low. And to make it worse, you can only place 3 of them. It's like they give you this awesome range, but then they're like, oh, by the way, it barely does any damage and you can't use too many. Still, in the early game, having that range is useful to chip away at enemies before they get too close, so don't write it off just yet. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Rockin' Bonnie, Pirate Withered Foxy, Freddle, Vendor Toy Chica, Buccaneer Foxy, Nightmare Freddy, Major Freddy, and Freddy. Alright, let's talk about some of the B tier early game units in Five Nights Tower Defense. Now, these characters are pretty solid, but they aren't necessarily the best of the best. But hey, that doesn't mean they can't get the job done in the early waves. Let's start with Rockin' Bonnie. She looks good on paper because of that full AoE, but trust me, there are better starters out there. Her damage just doesn't hit hard enough to make her a must-pick early on. Now, Pirate Withered Foxy and Major Freddy, they're kind of in the same boat. Foxy's okay as a starter, but his DPS isn't going to blow your mind, while Major Freddy offers solid single-target damage. His range is decent and he's got 4 placements, so if you're looking for a steady start, he's not a bad option at all. It's just that, later on, you might want to replace him with something more powerful once the tougher enemies start rolling in. And then we have Freddle, Vendor Toy Chica, and Buccaneer Foxy. These guys are your solid, middle-of-the-road picks. Freddle is alright, but his cooldown is a bit too high to make him top tier. Vendor Toy Chica? She's like a downgraded version of Patriot Freddy, but still good for the early waves. Now Buccaneer Foxy is basically like an upgraded regular Freddy, better damage, cooldown, range, you name it. Speaking of regular Freddy, he's one of the better starter units out there. You can place a bunch of him, and his low upgrade cost makes him a total bargain. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Patriot Freddy, Commando Endo, Phantom Cupcake, Rad Freddy, Endo02, Phantom Foxy, and Cowboy Freddy. Alright, let's dive into some of the A-tier early game units in Five Nights Tower Defense because these guys are lifesavers when you're just getting started. First up, Patriot Freddy. This guy is an absolute steal for how cheap he is. He's an explosion unit, so if you're dealing with big waves early on, just drop him in and watch the enemies get blasted off the map. Seriously, he's a must-have to clear out those early game hordes without breaking the bank. Next, we have Commando Endo. Now, his DPS might not blow you away, but here's the thing. The dude can summon units, and those little guys, they chip away at enemies, and the extra damage stacks up fast. Plus, if you're looking for something with a bit more bite in the early stages, Phantom Cupcake is your go-to. This spooky little cupcake deals some of the highest DPS among early game starters. It's just a solid choice if you need someone who can shred through enemies quickly. Now, let's talk about Rad Freddy. If you've been using Sniper Cupcake, it's time to switch gears, because Rad Freddy is just better. It's like Sniper Cupcake on steroids, nearly double the DPS, but with almost identical stats otherwise. Oh, and don't sleep on Phantom Foxy either. He's cheap, you can place him 4 times, and he's excellent for picking off individual targets. It's all about being smart with your early game resources, and these A-tier units, they're gonna make sure you start strong. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Phone Guy, Purple Guy, Tarnished Spring Bonnie, Witch Toy Chica, Jackpot Freddy, and Tavern Chica. Alright, let's talk about the absolute S-tier early game units you should be using in Five Nights TD. First up, we've got Phone Guy. Now Phone Guy is an AoE machine with insane DPS and range, and if that wasn't enough, he slows down enemies. He's like a mini crying child, but cheaper, and honestly, even holds his own in the later game. It's wild how strong he is early on, and you'll find him pulling more than his weight all the way through. Next, we've got the legend himself, Purple Guy. This dude is out here spawning turrets with incredible range and damage, basically letting you chill while they do the dirty work. If you're just starting out, Purple Guy is an absolute must. His turrets are game changers, shredding through waves of enemies without breaking a sweat. And for a starter unit, that's just crazy good value. You'll feel like a mastermind watching those turrets clear the board. And let's not forget about Tarnished Spring Bonnie. Now, she might be melee, but don't let that fool you. Her damage and range are next level. She hits hard, and I mean really hard. The only downside, she's a little trickier to get your hands on compared to someone like Patriot Freddy or Witch Toy Chica, but once you do, she's an absolute beast. Oh, and speaking of Witch Toy Chica, she's another top tier starter with a super cheap cost and solid damage against both bosses and mobs. Reliable, affordable, and deadly. Now let's talk about the best units for mid-game. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Cupcake Tank, Balloon Boy, Golden Freddy, Nightmare Chica, and Toy Chica. Alright, so let's talk about the D-tier mid-game units in Five Nights TD, and honestly, yikes, these guys are rough. First up, we've got Cupcake Tank, which, I've got to say, does literally nothing. Like, I'm not even exaggerating here. Its summons are so irrelevant that it feels like the developers made it as a joke. You drop it on the battlefield, and you're just sitting there watching it do, well, nothing. It's that kind of unit you throw out once just to see what happens, and then never use again. Then there's Balloon Boy, and listen, he's basically just Toy Chica, but with a way bigger price tag and no added value. It's like buying a $100 t-shirt that looks the same as a $10 one. Why would you do that? He's slow, expensive, and honestly, just feels like a waste of resources when you could invest in something actually useful. Worst of all, he's arguably the worst unit in the entire game. Yeah, it's that bad. Speaking of Toy Chica, let's talk about her too. Toy Chica is another one you should avoid. Her range is abysmal, and her DPS is so low it's like she's tickling enemies instead of attacking them. You'll find yourself facepalming every time she's on the field. And don't get me started on Nightmare Chica and Golden Freddy. Nightmare Chica's cost is sky high for what she brings to the table, and Golden Freddy, his DPS is so underwhelming that he's practically useless. High cost, low reward, pretty much a theme for these D tier units. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, 7 Seas Foxy, Bonnie, Withered Freddy, Nightmare Balloon Boy, Coco Boy, Nightmare Cupcake, and Withered Foxy. Alright, let's dive into some of the C tier mid-game units in Five Nights TD. These are the units that might seem decent at first glance, but when you start progressing through the game, you quickly realize they're a bit underwhelming. First up, we have 7 Seas Foxy. Now, Foxy here tries his best to mimic Leviathan Mangle, but it's like buying an off-brand cereal. It's just not the same. Sure, he has longer range, and that's cool, but his overall power doesn't quite hit the mark. He's useful for crowd control, especially for mobs, but don't expect him to carry you far. Still, if you're in the mid-game, Foxy can fill a slot, temporarily. Moving on to Nightmare Balloon Boy, and oh boy, where do I begin? For a mythic unit, this guy really drops the ball. Yeah, he has Pierce, but with his low damage and range, it's like bringing a balloon to a sword fight. He looks scary, but on the battlefield, not so much. Then there's Coco Boy, slightly better than Balloon Boy, but not by much. He at least has an explosion radius that redeems him somewhat, but overall, neither of these two are going to be game changers. Finally, let's talk about Withered Foxy. This guy used to be the big deal back in the day, but now he's like that old school hero who's just outclassed by newer, shinier units. You can use him as a starter if you're feeling nostalgic, but honestly, there are much better choices now. Time has not been kind to Withered Foxy, and in today's meta, he's really not worth the investment unless you're stuck. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Endo04, Algae Fredbear, Mercenary Foxy, Nightmare Foxy, Artillery Puppet, Glitched Cupcake, Hooligan Toy Bonnie, and Endo03. Alright, let's dive into some B tier mid-game units for Five Nights TD. Now, I know the B tier units might not be the most exciting, but trust me, these guys can really hold their own in the right situations. Take Endo04, for example. This guy comes with the Cone AoE burn attack, which is great for dealing with packs of enemies. But, there's always a but, he's kind of a downgrade compared to Flame Empress Chica. So, while he's not terrible, you're probably better off looking elsewhere if you've got Chica on your roster. Now, let's talk about Algae Fredbear. This one's basically a slightly nerfed version of Withered Golden Freddy, but hey, don't sleep on him. He's still pretty solid, especially since his damage holds up well, even though you can only place 3 of them. Plus, you've got Mercenary Foxy, who is crazy cheap to place and upgrade. His damage isn't going to blow anyone away, but since you can place 4 of these sneaky guys, it kind of makes up for it. It's not flashy, but if you're in the mid-game grind, Mercenary Foxy is a strong, budget-friendly option. Then there's Nightmare Foxy. Think of him like a budget PBB. He's got similar damage, a lower cooldown, and a bit more range, but the AoE is smaller. That trade-off doesn't make him bad though, it's all about picking your battles, and if you're looking for long-range destruction, Artillery Puppet is your go-to. Big damage, long range, but the cooldown, yeah, it's rough. Still, if you don't have any other AoE options, he can carry his weight. Oh, and Glitched Cupcake. Great full AoE, solid DPS, but the range leaves something to be desired. Not the worst, but definitely not top tier. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Rave Demon Bonnie, Slick Bonnie, Nightmare Fredbear, Sentinel Bonnie, Rocketeer Mangle, Withered Golden Freddy, and Phantom Golden Freddy. Alright, let's dive into the world of Five Nights Tower Defense and chat about some fantastic A-tier mid-game units. First up, we have Rave Demon Bonnie. This little guy packs quite the punch with respectable DPS, but he's got a bit of a drawback with his Cone AoE and shorter range. While he can dish out damage, he may not be the best option compared to some of the other top tier units. Still, he can definitely hold his own during those challenging mid-game waves. Next on the list is Slick Bonnie. Think of him as a budget version of Bounty Mangle. He may have lower cost, range, and DPS, but don't let that fool you. He's still a powerhouse in the mid-game. If you're looking for a strong unit that won't break the bank, Slick Bonnie is your guy. And let's not forget about Nightmare Fredbear. He's another solid pick, but you might want to keep an eye out for the likes of War Machine Foxy, who definitely outshine him in terms of overall performance. Now, let's give a shout out to Withered Golden Freddy and Phantom Golden Freddy. Withered Golden Freddy might actually take the crown over Sentinel Bonnie thanks to his higher placement count, which translates to a more impressive total DPS. Just remember though, you'll need to invest a bit more to fully unlock his potential. On the other hand, Phantom Golden Freddy is kind of like a slightly weaker version of his counterpart, but he's still worth considering if you're looking for solid support. So, whether you're going with the spooky vibes of Rave Demon Bonnie or the reliability of Slick Bonnie, you've got some solid options to crush those mid-game waves. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Circuit Breaker Freddy, Galleon Foxy, Flame Empress Chica, Scott, Phantom Balloon Boy, War Machine Foxy, Blind Eye Foxy, and Bounty Mangle. Alright, let's dive into some of the top tier mid-game units in Five Nights Tower Defense. If you're looking to amp up your strategy and crush those waves of creepy animatronics, you've got to check out these picks. First up, we have Circuit Breaker Freddy. This guy is an absolute powerhouse when it comes to single target damage. Sure, he might be a bit pricey to place, but once he's on the field, his insane DPS can carry you through some tough spots. Plus, he's not just a mid-game wonder, he can still hold his own in the endgame. Next, let's talk about Galleon Foxy. Not only does he deliver solid damage, but he also comes with the added bonus of slowing down enemies with his splash attack. This makes him a fantastic choice for controlling the battlefield. And then there's Flame Empress Chica. Oh boy, she's a game changer. With her impressive range, cooldown, and damage, she brings the heat, literally, with her splash burn attacks. This means you're getting even more bang for your buck in terms of DPS. She's definitely one of those units you want in your lineup for that mid-game push. And how can we forget Scott? This unit is practically the definition of OP in the mid-game. With insane damage, splash effects, and a whopping 6 upgrade levels, Scott is built to carry you through the toughest waves. He can really solo carry your defense if you place him right. Don't overlook Phantom Balloon Boy either. With his massive damage and AoE capabilities, he's a solid choice as well, although his upgrades can hit the wallet a bit hard. Finally, Bounty Mangle rounds out our list with a huge AoE attack and low cooldown. With 30 maximum range, she's one of the best mid-game units you can grab. So, if you want to dominate the tower defense arena, these units are the way to go. Finally, let's talk about late game and the best support units. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Fredbear, Spring Bonnie, Maestro Puppet, Plush Trap, Hawaii, Endo02, Endo, The Crying Child, Amalgam, and Fazcard. Alright, let's dive into the support units of Five Nights TD. First up, we have Fredbear. Now, Fredbear is like Hawaii Endo02's cooler sibling. He boasts a better range boost and allows you to place one extra unit. This means more firepower on the field, which is always a win, right? If you're looking to enhance your setup, Fredbear is a fantastic choice. Then there's Spring Bonnie, who's basically a stronger version of Endo. He's great for those endless runs where you really need to stretch your strategy. Having both Spring Bonnie and Endo can give you that nice little edge to push through tougher waves. Now, let's talk about the Maestro Puppet. He's almost a twin to Fredbear, but with slightly lower stats. What's cool about him is how easy he is to obtain, making him a solid pick for players who want to boost their defenses without breaking the bank. And don't forget Plush Trap. This little guy is another fantastic range buffer. He fits right into the meta and can help ensure your DPS units are always working at full capacity. Trust me, you can't really go wrong with adding him to your lineup. Finally, we've got the Crying Child. This unit is basically Amalgam on steroids. He slows down enemies in a cone by 50% and you can place 2 of them at once, making it an overpowered choice for those endless matches. However, let's not sugarcoat it. Amalgam itself is pretty underwhelming. Its slow effect just can't compete with the damage output you could be stacking instead. And last but certainly not least is Fazcard, the first money farming unit in the game. Spoiler alert, he's not exactly useful in any mode, so if you're looking for effective support, focus on the top picks like Fredbear, Spring Bonnie, and the Crying Child. Happy gaming. Marionette's Puppeteer, Phantom Chica, Phantom Freddy, Shadow Freddy, Mangle, and Puppet. Alright folks, let's dive into the D tier units for the endgame in Five Nights Tower Defense. First up, we have Marionette's Puppeteer. Now, I get it, if you're on a budget, this unit can look pretty appealing. With its high AoE DPS when fully upgraded, it can dish out some decent damage. But here's the catch, it has a relatively low range. So, while it might save you some coins, you'll want to be strategic about where you place it. If you can manage its positioning, it could surprise you. Next on our list is Phantom Chica. Don't underestimate her. Once fully upgraded, she packs quite a punch. With a low cooldown and those massive AoE explosions, she's definitely a step up from Mangle. Sure, her damage might not blow you away, but if you're looking for something that can cover a bit of ground without breaking the bank, Phantom Chica could be your gal. Just keep her in the right spots, and she might just save your tower from an early demise. Now let's get real about Phantom Freddy, Shadow Freddy, Mangle, and the Puppet. Phantom Freddy just doesn't stack up with its low placement count and weak DPS for a $15k unit. Yikes. And don't even get me started on Shadow Freddy, he's pretty much outclassed by Shadow Bonnie and Blighted Endo Freddy. Mangle? Let's just say her DPS, range, and explosion radius are in dire need of some TLC. Finally, we have the Puppet, which has seen so many rebalance attempts that it's almost tragic. With one of the lowest DPS in the game, you'll want to steer clear unless you really enjoy hair-pulling frustration. So, my advice? Skip these guys and invest in something with a bit more bite. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Bounded Shadow, Blighted Endo Freddy, Tuned Mangle, Phantom Puppet, Plain Boy, and Enforcer Bonnie. Alright, let's dive into the world of C-tier units in Five Nights Tower Defense. First up, we have the Bounded Shadow. This guy is one of the strongest pierce towers you can find in the game, boasting impressive DPS that rivals even some of the continuous units. But hold your horses. Its low range and the limited 2 placements really balance things out. It's like that powerful friend who just can't reach the cookie jar on the top shelf. Great potential, but it needs a bit of help to shine. Next on our list is the Blighted Endo Freddy. This unit brings the full AoE experience with solid range and one of the highest DPS among AoE units. Sounds great, right? Well, here's the catch. Its performance is just a notch better than the Marionette, making you question if it's truly worth the investment. It's kind of like buying the latest phone just for a slightly better camera. You know you want it, but is it really necessary? Now let's talk about Tuned Mangle. Sure, it's a step up from regular Mangle, but don't expect it to be overpowered. Its big splash AoE is fun and can be effective in certain scenarios, but it still falls short compared to other units in the game. And then there's Phantom Puppet, which is basically a pricier version of Leviathan Mangle. Not the best deal, right? Lastly, we have Plain Boy, one of the most expensive units in the game. It's got decent range and DPS, but with only 2 placements available, it can't compete with the likes of Phantom Mangle. And let's not forget Enforcer Bonnie, which is essentially a weaker Valkyrie Chica but comes at a lower price due to its higher pull rate. So while these units have their moments, you might want to think twice before committing your resources. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Shadow Bonnie, Phantom Mangle, Leviathan Mangle, Wraith Freddy, Spectral Chica, Nightmare, and Withered Bonnie. Alright, let's dive into some of the B-tier endgame units in Five Nights Tower Defense. These characters may not be the absolute best, but they definitely pack a punch and can turn the tide in your favor if you play your cards right. First up, we have Shadow Bonnie. Now, this little guy is like an upgraded version of Blighted Endo Freddy, boasting nearly 50% more power. Sure, he comes with a higher cost, but if you're in endless mode, that's not really a problem, right? Just keep in mind that his range isn't the longest, so positioning is key. Moving on, let's talk about Phantom Mangle. This unit excels in single target DPS and is arguably one of the best non-evolution units in the game. Plus, with more placement options than Valkyrie Chica, you'll have the flexibility to adapt your strategy as the waves roll in. Now, don't forget about Leviathan Mangle. This unit is a beast when it comes to pierce damage, making it perfect for slicing through hordes of enemies. Its single target DPS is impressive too, so you're getting a well-rounded unit for your team. On the other hand, we have Wraith Freddy. He's an AoE monster, matching the DPS of Withered Endo Freddy, but with 1 extra placement. Just be cautious about his range, as it's a bit limited, and if you're looking for a solid investment, Withered Bonnie is your girl. She's basically a long-range, single-target version of Shadow Freddy, and while her stats might not shine as brightly as others, she's affordable and can help you build a strong foundation in your tower defense strategy. So there you have it. B-tier units that may not be the top dogs, but they sure can make a difference. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Master Puppeteer, Valkyrie Chica, Nightmare Mangle, Springtrap, Fractured Bonnie, Nightmare Bonnie, Gunslinger Endo, and Abyssal Foxy. Alright, let's dive into some of the most powerful A-tier units you can deploy in Five Nights Tower Defense. First up, we've got the Master Puppeteer. Now, don't be fooled by its seemingly average stats. This guy packs a punch with a damage over time effect that really cranks up its DPS to insane levels. Trust me, having the Master Puppeteer on your team can be a game changer in those late game battles. You'll find yourself clearing waves like it's a walk in the park. Next, we can't talk about late game units without mentioning Valkyrie Chica. This unit is a total powerhouse when it comes to single target damage. The best part? She's super affordable to place and upgrade, making her a must-have in any serious strategy. And for those who love AoE attacks, look no further than Nightmare Mangle. With an impressive area of effect attack and poison capabilities, this unit does some serious work. Just keep in mind that its range is a bit lacking, but don't worry, you can always boost that with some support units or enchants. Last but certainly not least, let's give a shout out to Springtrap and Fractured Bonnie. Springtrap is an absolute beast with insane DPS, launching 5 piercing projectiles at once. The only catch? You can only place 2 of them, so choose wisely. On the other hand, Fractured Bonnie brings fantastic DPS and range to the table, though it comes at a higher cost. And if you're looking for some top-notch single-target DPS, Nightmare Bonnie and Gunslinger Endo won't disappoint. Both units are top-tier choices for dealing massive damage. Just make sure you've got something to enhance their range for maximum effectiveness. And let's not forget Abyssal Foxy. With those recent buffs, he's become a continuous DPS monster, thanks to his permanent slow effect. You'll definitely want to keep him in your lineup. The units in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Astral Bonnie, Valkyrie Prime, RWQFS as Fast XC, Nautic Crusher Mangle, Agonized Springtrap, Limitless Shadow, Goliath, Endo Freddy, Glitch Puppeteer, Outlaw Freddy, Reactor Freddy, and Hydra Mangle. Alright folks, now that we're deep into the action of Five Nights Tower Defense, let's talk about some of the absolute game changers in our S tier lineup. If you're looking to dominate the battlefield, you'll definitely want to keep an eye on these units. Grab your popcorn because we're diving right in. First up is Astral Bonnie. Let me tell you, she's a force to be reckoned with. Not only does she bring continuous splash damage to the table, but her DPS is off the charts. Plus, she's the only Apex rarity unit in the game, which means she's a bit on the pricey side, but trust me, she's worth every single coin. With her insane utility, Astral Bonnie can slow down waves of enemies while dishing out damage like a pro. If you want to keep the pressure on your foes, she's your go-to gal. Next, we've got Valkyrie Prime, and wow, does she pack a punch. When you compare her to Valkyrie Chica, it's like night and day. Her single target DPS is mind-blowing, making her the queen of taking down those pesky bosses. If you need someone who can eliminate high health enemies quickly, Valkyrie Prime should be at the top of your list. You won't regret adding her to your roster, that's for sure. Now let's talk about RWQFS-SXC. If you thought Shadow Bonnie was strong, wait until you see her. This unit is just plain broken. With damage levels that can obliterate almost anything in her path, RWQFS-SXC is arguably the strongest unit in the game right now. If you want to clear waves like they're nothing, you need this powerhouse in your lineup. Just watch the enemies disappear. Moving on, we can't forget about Nautic Crusher Mangle. This unit is a massive upgrade over the Leviathan Mangle, boasting higher DPS, extended range, and more placement options. However, crafting this beast requires a mountain of materials, so prepare for some serious farming. But trust me, the effort pays off when you unleash this unit's might on the battlefield. It's all about the grind, right? Last but definitely not least, we have Hydra Mangle. This beauty rains napalm on enemies at an insane rate, combining high DPS with AoE attacks that apply burn on hit. Talk about bringing the heat. With Hydra Mangle in your arsenal, you can take out groups of enemies and watch the chaos unfold. If you're looking for a unit that can handle the heat of battle, look no further. So there you have it, some of the most powerful units you can find in Five Nights Tower Defense. Which ones are you most excited to use? Let me know in the comments and let's strategize together. The video ends here. See you in another video. Don't forget to subscribe.